I feel as clarinetists, we've been overlooking a serious factor when choosing a ligature. This is a wonderful original facing Charles Shedvell. And I'm going to pair it with a classic choice with a great 1960s Bonade ligature. So, what do we normally do? We put the ligature and we have it free sliding where we want it. We decide where we want it to be, so maybe we give ourselves some more freedom. So let's say we want to put the ligature here, let's just say. So we put it where we want it, and then we tighten it. Here's the problem. When I put it where I want it, the reed can still move a lot. Well, what's the issue with that? It's only being tightened from one dimension. I want to contrast with a great ligature that I found about a year ago, and it has changed my life. This is the great original patented block stamp Daniel Bonade ligature. The German silver is much thicker than almost any other German silver ligature I've ever seen, and it's incredible. And when I put it on, if I don't even put pressure down, maybe just a little bit of pressure down, slides down, I can't really move the reed from side to side. Just putting a little down pressure and the reed is pretty locked in, and then I tighten it. And this ligature does it better than any I've ever seen. There are other ligatures that do it pretty well, such as Ishimori ligatures. Unfortunately, I don't have any of those to demonstrate today because I've sold all my Ishimoris because I prefer these vintage Bonade ligatures. But let me demonstrate what I do. So if I go back to that first Bonade ligature and line the reed up where I want, put the ligature on, it's too loose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the reed up here, way up into the reed, and I'm going to tighten it there. Now I'm not going to tighten it way down. I'm just going to tighten it a bit so that when I lower the ligature, I can just put a little down pressure, just a little bit, and it locks in. And now, there's still a little bit I can move of that ligature. There's a little bit. So this ligature is too big for this Bonade, and it's kind of hitting the sides of the reed. So again, if I go back to that original Bonade ligature, and again, I just watch how I do it. I got the reed lined up, and I just slide it down. Now, no matter how much force I put, I can't move the ligature side to side, and the sides of the reed are clear, especially on the right. I still feel this mouthpiece is a little too small for this ligature. Let me switch to a fatter mouthpiece, or also a fatter reed, like a V12. Let's check this out. Sliding on. It clocks in. I can't move it side to side. And now, especially that right side is free. The left side, I usually use V12s, and this is a blue box. So it's making my life a little more difficult. That's another thing to consider when we do this. So if the ligature is too big for the mouthpiece, here's another Charles Shedvell. Unfortunately, this Charles is much skinnier of a blank, and even though, and this is that great Bonade, I'm putting it down low, the reed, I can move so much side to side, so this ligature doesn't work. Now, can I tighten it a little bit up there? Sure. But ultimately, the contour of this ligature does not match the contour of the profile of the mouthpiece. So, do I have a ligature that can work for this Charles Shedvell? I certainly can. And don't worry, I'm going to demonstrate this with modern mouthpieces as well. This Bonade matches with this Shedvell pretty well. So If I put the reed on, again, I tighten it up into the reed. I'm holding the ligature way up high. And then I slide it down, it locks. Still not locking for me. Now it's locked. Now I can't move the reed from side to side. Again, Ishimori seemed to do this pretty well. That reed is locked in, and then I tighten it. And now the reed is held so much more securely because it's matching the contour here. It matches the contour from all sides, and it's being held in part due to, just pushing it down by gravity. It automatically locks, kind of like an O-ring ligature, Florian Popa ligature, those bois ligatures. So certain mouthpiece profiles make it very difficult. This Casper I love. It's a Chedvel blank. It's a very thin, skinny Chedvel blank, and it makes matching a ligature a little more difficult. And with this personal Casper mouthpiece, even a brand new Bonade, let's just say, this is a Taplin Weir gold Bonade, it doesn't work effectively enough for me. By the way, something to note about modern Bonades. Oftentimes they're modified so that they allow the size of the reed to vibrate, but that's not always great. Let me demonstrate. So there you'll see, in order to make it grip where I want it, and by the way, that's a personal preference in part, in order to make it grip where I want it, the screws are fully binding up here. And it still isn't making contact, so this mouthpiece is too skinny for this ligature to really effectively seal it. Now, sure, can I just move the ligature where I want it and then tighten it? Sure. I'm going to tighten it way down. Now I'm putting a little too much pressure down. Now, sure, I can't move the reed from side to side, but these screws are a little tighter than I want them. And it's just because this ligature doesn't match the profile of this mouthpiece. If I take the same ligature, same reed, and do it to a really fat early Chedvel, you're going to notice it works quite well. There it is. It locked in. Oh, I can still move the reed though. And it's because the design of this Bonade, and I love the Taplin Weir Bonades. This might be my favorite modern ligature. There you see on the left the reed is free, but even when I'm pushing it down, I can move the reed so very easily from side to side. Same mouthpiece, same reed, original German silver Bonade. Oh, that's gripping almost too well. I actually have to loosen the screws because this mouthpiece is super fat. There, it just clicked in. No matter how much pressure I put, I can't move the reed from side to side. And this is before I tightened the screws because it matches the profile so well. Now, I have a lot of room to tighten those screws, but even before I tightened them, that reed was securely in place. This is why, for example, I oftentimes don't use a Rovner ligature. This is a modern Rovner ligature. It's very well used. Found this one in a band room. I can keep pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down, and even all that way down, I can very easily move the reed from side to side. If I tighten it higher up here, like I was doing with, 1970s Bonades, and then I inch it down, and I'm wanting to be very careful with this because I don't want to stretch the ligature out, but ultimately I think that that is a necessary evil. You see, even tightened way up there, I can still inch the ligature lower and lower and lower, and then up here, I can still move the reed. I think this is the real advantage of a metal ligature, a good metal ligature, over string ligature. Okay, this is an old Valentine's Day ligature. I got this with an Henri Chedvel, and it's a great ligature. It's one of my favorite ligatures. There's no Bonade rails, but it's great. Obviously, this is a period mouthpiece, and check it out. I'm just going to inch it a little bit lower. Really, that just clicked in. I really can't move the reed at all. at all. Up there, I bit a little bit. If I just inch you just a little bit lower, I can't. Now, check out how much, and this is, do you see all that amount I could turn the screws? And that's just because it matched the profile of the mouthpiece and the profile of the reed. And again, typically I use V12s, and this is a blue box. So that shows you how well this ligature grips before tightening. So let's try this. Okay, let's try this with probably the best inverted bonade I've ever played. These screws, slight nickel wear. This is the best inverted bonade. So, okay, if I inch it lower, 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 I can inch that a lot lower than normal. The sides, in general, are free. Again, if it was my V12, it would be free. I have a lot of room to tighten, so that's exactly where I want. And you know what? That holds pretty securely. I really can't move the reed at all. I really can't. And I have a lot of room to tighten. That's what makes a good ligature. In my humble opinion, that is what holds it securely. If I tried the same ligature, that was a very fat mouthpiece. If I try it with an M13, a good M13, best one I've ever played. So you see just how fat that other mouthpiece was, because when I inch it down, that is really low. So let me try way up here to try and tighten so that it'll grip where I want it. Okay. Very good. I can't move the reed from side to side, but you notice I don't have a lot of wiggle room there. Let's see how binded the screws are here. Okay, not bad. So, yeah, this Bonade ligature actually grips really well, but most inverted Bonade ligatures don't grip really well, and they're notorious for sliding. This one with these screws, I think, are the best inverted Bonade ligatures that I've played. Let's try a few more, because there's another way to think about this. By the way, here's an old B45, engraved. I really like this B45. If I put the really great original Bonade ligature on, the best at gripping that I find. You see just how loose the screws are, and yet I can't move that at all. If I try that with a sleeker, a less fat mouthpiece, and by the way, I'm not saying that fat mouthpieces are better. Here's that same M13. You see just how much lower the ligature sits. The screws are very loose, but because this doesn't match the profile, because this is so slim, I can move that very easily side to side, even with the really great Bonade. Okay, here's a Babbitt Pine. This is a slimmer blank, and in general, I run into the same problems. This is a very heavy, thick German silver Casper ligature. It grips extremely well. There it is, it just locked in, and I can't move the reed from side to side. But in general, Babbitt's, and they can be hard to find a ligature that matches it perfectly. But that's quite good. And these Casper ligatures can sometimes be really good at that. Again, typically the most sought after ligatures are just really good at gripping before the screws are applied. So let's consider a Bonade ligature that might be too overly stretched. The great Harold Wright would replace his Bonade ligature like once a year or once every 2 years. So this is a slightly thinner Charles Shedville. This is a very well used Bonade, and again, you notice how the original Bonades are ultimately more circular in shape, unlike the modern Bonades that are good. In general, they're adjusted. They're adjusted to allow the size of the reed to work better, but it affects how well they grip. Again, as much as I love this Taplin Weir Bonade. So with the ligature where it is, I can slide it way down there. That's lower than I typically like. So let me do my trick. I'm going to tighten it up here. But you're starting to notice that the screws are starting to bind. And now, even that close together, I can still, way too easily move the reed. So, okay, and there I can't tighten any more up here. And yet, I can move the reed from side to side. That's awful. If I take the same ligature with a fatter mouthpiece, a very fat mouthpiece, this is an old mellophone. Up there it just clicked in, and I can't adjust the reed at all. And I still have a little room to tighten. So even though this ligature is kind of stretched out too much, if I find a mouthpiece that's thick enough for it, it's not stretched out. Now ultimately that's still affecting how free, you see the sides aren't free, and the rails are perhaps too close together, but I think both of those are actually secondary to how well it grips before screw tension is applied. As an example, if I use a ligature that I love, a modern-ish ligature that I love, an old Buffet 2 screws, I notice these like to sit a lot lower. If I drill it down, I can't move the reed at all. That's gripping extremely well with a lot of, and again, I'm not overly tightening. I can tighten this a lot more. And you notice that's not sitting parallel. The size of the reed really, there's way too much contact with the reed to be ideal in my humble opinion. But it doesn't matter as much because it's gripping well. If I try my favorite Rovner ligature, I think my favorite Rovner ligature I've ever played, that reached a stopping point. And you know what? I can't move the reed at all. And there's still a lot of room to tighten. Again, on a fat mouthpiece. If I tried this on a Van Doren, profile 88, whatever, thinner body. And again, I'm not saying that thinner bodies are inherently worse. In a lot of ways, they're better. But it's hard to find a ligature that really fits. Here's that really slim Casper. So it goes way too low. That shows you just how much skinnier this blank is. So if I tighten way up here, I'm holding the reed with my thumb. And then I slide it lower. There, it kind of clicked. And guess what? I can't. Well, I can a little bit. Now if I tighten it, now I can't. This is really what separates the ligatures for me. And then how well does it grip with how little contact it makes? One more for sake of comparison. So let's take a really thin M13 and let's use an old 2-screw Yamaha ligature. And wow, it's gripping. These typically are too tight for young students and they don't know to loosen them up. But you know what? That's pretty tight. And I had a lot of space there before I tightened it up. But you notice it's not sitting flat against the mouthpiece at all on the left side. And that's funny. But you know what? This actually does somewhat of a good job. It's better than a ligature that's loose. Last example. Rose gold, kangaroo leather. There, it just clicked. And this is on a really slim mouthpiece. Wow, I can't move it at all. And I have a lot of room to tighten. And I only tighten to the point where it starts to catch. I'm just a little beyond, right? Not here, just right there. Because the rest of the work is being done by the fact that this is held down. I think this is so overlooked. And ultimately, people spending hundreds of dollars on ligatures that aren't as good as a good old Bonade you can find on eBay. As long as it matches the contour of your mouthpiece. You know, what's funny is, again, why do people over-tighten? They over-tighten in order to make the mouthpiece secure when switching between B flat and A. But a ligature that grips it really well sometimes is also really good at holding when you're switching as well. That's where the community is almost there.